got 3:30, so we'll call the February 23rd meeting of Ways and Means Committee to order. Take attendance, please.
Purdue?
Here.
Berger?
Here.
Castleton?
Here.
Adagustakis?
Here.
Hines?
Here.
Benton?
Here. Okay, I'm filling in for the actual Chairman Leahy today, so we'll get started with number 1, Carol Chichester. Supplemental appropriation to the county budget. Is she somebody here for her?
Go find out.
Okay, we'll go on to number 2. I don't see John McCary here either. Is he outside?
Joel's here.
No.
If they're not here, they don't get the money, right?
Joel's here. All right, we'll go to Joel.
Okay.
Good thing you showed up early. So we're skipping to number 3A, which is to amend and affirm the Orange County investment policy. Can I get a motion and second for discussion?
Second.
Okay. Joel?
Thank you. This is a legislative request to the annual review and affirmation of the Orange County investment policy. Every year, we have the opportunity, actually by law, we have to review the policy, and we amend it at least once a year, review it at least once a year, and if necessary throughout the year, we will amend it. On the back side of the letter of request, Exhibit A is the one page that typically would change exactly from year to year. This gives a listing of all the banks that the county does business with, and the dollar amount is the maximum deposit that we can have funds with, that we could, they can hold our funds. What this doesn't mean is this is how much money they have, this is how much they'd be willing to have, and they are capable of collateralizing. It is very important to understand that they have to collateralize up to 102% of any money they hold, if it's a bank account, if it's an investment, if it's a money market, if it's a CD. So if they're willing to accept $100,000 or $100 million, they need to have the ability to put up the equivalent of 102% of those deposits. What we do each year before we submit this is we go to each bank and ask them, do they want to modify their amount? It's not unusual for them to want to increase it, keep it the same, or decrease it based upon how much activity they think they may have with the county. So that's what the purpose of this is.
Mike?
Are there any new banks on here?
There is actually one substitute bank. The very last bank, Boston Spa National Bank, they're a bank from one of our third-party administrators for the liabilities and claims. There was a new vendor, so they changed the bank, and we put them on our investment list, so we make sure it's collateralized.
And just one other question, it says at the bottom there's 2 primary dealers, but only one.
Yeah, actually, that's it. I should correct that. We used to have 2 primary dealers, but over the course of the years, we've changed it. Actually, the other one was Merrill Lynch. We've dropped them from the list, so I should modify that to show that
Only one.
Only correct. And I will fix that in the investment policy.
Mike?
I thought we had brought that up last year also, so it should have been fixed from last year.
Absolutely. I will do that today.
Any other questions from committee members?
Just, Mr. Chairman, as a registered security principal with another firm, I'm not allowed to vote on this particular item.
Okay. Fine. Jeffrey?
Yeah, Joe, we used to have a policy, so I thought we had a policy that you had to have a branch in Orange County. Is that still operative?
When you say a policy, in the investment policy itself?
We had a vote taken in years past where it was discussed and agreed upon that in order to be on the list of banks, they had to have some office or a branch or some kind of nexus with Orange County. That's my recollection. You don't recall that?
I don't, but let me explain why you wouldn't want to limit ourselves to that. When it comes to what they call a transactional account or a checking account, you would need a branch, a brick and mortar branch within the county, if not within the municipality, in this case Goshen. In the case of investments, if we only limit ourselves to brick and mortar branches within the county, we would hurt ourselves. And I'll give you an example. We have one bank here, Citibank. Okay, Citibank, to the best of my knowledge, does not have a branch in Orange County, but they do accept investment funds from us. Now, understand that we do not, everything is done on a bidding basis. When we go out for a bid for investments, we accept bids on either CDs or money markets only, and we give it to the highest bank. If we precluded banks and institutions that didn't have a presence in the county, we'd be limiting our investments and not maximizing the amount of yield.
I understand. It makes
sense.
It makes sense maybe not to have the policy, but I remember that we at one time did have a policy, but since it's not, it's against your recommendation anyway.
Right.
Satisfied?
Yeah.
Okay. Mr. Chairman?
Yeah, just as a point of information, Mr. Chairman, anyone in the room that's wearing a hat must remove their hat while we're in session.
Okay.
That's my hair, Mike.
This is mine too.
Any other questions? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried, thank you.
One extension.
One abstention, right? Before we go on to number 2, I made a mistake. I should have announced that also legislators present are Myrna Kemnitz, Jeff Berkman, Tom Fahucky, and Chairman Philmar. Just for the record. Oh, Mr. Broadnelli snuck in after I wrote down the names. And Katie Benelli as well, correct. Okay, B, review and affirm the Orange County debt management policy.
Again, this is a policy that is not required by state law, that we've had in place for a number of years. We implemented this on basis of recommendations from the rating agencies, in addition to other municipal market vendors, and I'll explain what the benefit of this is. Again, this was developed a number of years ago, and every year we update it as necessary, but the very minimum, in the back of the legislative request, you'll see Appendix A and Appendix B, which is what is referred to as the computation of debt contracting limitation, which is Schedule A, and the statement of debt contracting power, which is Schedule B. Both these schedules are required by state law to file with the Comptroller's Office, but this becomes also part of our debt management policy. What we do is each year we update it for the most current figures, which is at the end of a fiscal year or calendar year. The most important number you want to see, and I'm not going to, unless you want, I won't bore you with the detail of how you come to these calculations, but the most important number here, if you go to the bottom right-hand column on Appendix B, it's 91.26. That is the debt contracting margin. What that means is we have 91.26% that we have not borrowed against. We've only used 8.74% of what our capacity is calculated on Appendix A, which is based upon the 5-year average and full valuation for the county. This number has increased actually from last year, which is a positive. You want this to either stay the same or increase, meaning that we have capacity to borrow more. There is no way we'd ever want to be able to borrow as much as we can. You can see that we could borrow over $2 billion. If we borrowed anywhere close to that and we had a 50% margin, our bond rating wouldn't be what it is, and I'll get to that in a moment. So the idea is to keep the debt margin as high as possible, and which we have. It's been 90% for a number of years, and it's broke 91% rounding. So it's actually getting better. So those are the two changes that we put into the debt management policy. What I've done is, I know in the past you only see 2 pages or 1 page of these policies. If you want a full copy of it, they're only maybe 7 to 10 pages long at most. I've distributed in the past. I have copies. You could have a full copy of it, but I didn't want to put it in the packet, to waste paper. Anyone who wants, I could give you a copy of both. That's not a problem.
Thank you. Can I get a motion and a second for discussion, please?
I'll move.
Second. Herbie. Also, Mr. Depew, Legislator Depew has just arrived. Questions from committee members? Dan?
Yeah, Joel, in your tenure with the county, how low has that gone and how high has that gone? What's the range on that number?
Actually, 1995 we were 94%, and we went down to the low 80s and went back up to 91%. And again, it's dependent upon the borrowing activity, which is contingent upon the type of projects that we have out there. When we were doing the jail, courthouse, things of that nature. We have higher borrowing, then of course the outstanding debt was higher, and then you would have a lower margin. As we pay down more debt, the margin will go up, meaning the capacity we have to borrow.
We could build a hell of a county building for $2 billion.
Don't give them any ideas.
Any other questions from committee members? Hearing none, all in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you.
Before we move on to the next resolution,
Sure.
let's get a request. Just to, everyone received a memo from myself regarding the 2011 serial bonds for the county. We're going out for sale for $20,700,000 of capital projects that should have gone to the Ways and Means Committee, correct?
Mhm.
And it has a listing of by category what we're borrowing for, not specific projects, but category of projects. The sale is actually tomorrow. It's done similar to the basis of our investments. It goes out publicly through public notice through the bond buyer, and there are bids that are received by our financial advisor, and the lowest, what they call the net interest cost. The lowest net interest cost, that institution is awarded the bonds, and they purchase the bonds. Tomorrow is the sale, and 2 weeks from now we've actually closed on the borrowing itself. Along the process, what we do when we borrow, we go to and we have a bond rating. We subscribe to Moody's Investor Service, and as part of the borrowing, we have to go to them and we share our financials and demographic information, and they in turn issue a bond rating based upon the information for this particular bond issue. We did that in the last week and a half, and today we received the bond rating from them, which is we were reaffirmed as a AAA as of yesterday, and that information has gone out over the financial wires. Now, one of the things why I want to bring it up is not only because we have the bond issue that's being sold tomorrow, but part of the reason why we did the debt management policy is when we were looking to get upgrades. We were originally a AA2, then we got to upgrade to a AA1. Part of the reason is they asked not only about our financial health and the demographics of the county, is what policies are in place. So we statutorily required to have investment policy. They suggested what other policies could you put out there, and that's when we put together the debt management policy. So those are just a component of a lot of things they look at in terms of deciding are we a AAA or not, and that's just one of the contributing things.
Joel, could you tell us what the interest rate is going to be for these bonds tomorrow?
I can tell you tomorrow afternoon when we get the bids, to be honest.
Oh,
The bids are coming tomorrow, and I can give you, actually,
okay.
as soon as I get that information, I'll issue what the final results were by
Okay.
Friday, of how many people bid and what the winning rates were and
Okay.
what all the rates were. I'll have that information by Friday.
Okay. Question, Mike?
Yeah, you can't give us that now, but I'm sure you have a guess. You would suspect it'll be around 4.70 plus or minus 5 basis points, I would take it.
Yeah, I don't want to guess, man. I'll tell you why, because a lot of it is based upon the amortization and how many. There are dozens of projects that are built into the issuance of the $20 million. Some of them are as little as 5 years amortization, some are as many as 25 years. So what they do is they take the weighted average to come up with what the amortization is for this.
Do you know what the weighted average is?
No, I have to talk about it. But what I will also do, once that is done, I'll have that information for you. In addition, we issue what is called a preliminary POS, or preliminary official statement. Some of you are aware of this. When you look to invest in a company, they'll have a prospectus. This is similar to a prospectus. We had to issue a POS that went out to potential investors and purchasers. Once the bonds are sold, it'll be an official statement which will have the winning banking institution and the rates on it. What I didn't do is bother to make multiple copies of the POS because that costs a lot of money. What we will do is with the official statement have sufficient copies printed so the legislature will get that. And when we have it, it's a lot of interesting information. It has demographics, has financial information, it just has general information about the county. And obviously what you want to do is not only be honest in there, you want to put your best foot forward of what the county has to offer in terms of recreation, education, so on and so forth.
Just as a for instance, like it wouldn't, in my opinion, pay to amortize computer technology over 25 years because that changes.
And not only that, it's actually limited by state law to 5 years because they understand about.
They understand.
Correct. You are limited by law how far you can go out. Doesn't mean you can go, you could, no
You
more
go
than 5
less.
years, but you can go less.
Actually, you said the total face value of the bonding was 20.7 million?
Correct.
Didn't you get this, Mike?
I did, but somehow I don't have it with me.
Okay. We'll get you another copy if you want.
That's okay.
Okay. On to C, supplemental appropriation to increase the distribution of sales tax line for $3,025,160. Can I get a motion in a second?
Second.
Okay, Joel?
This is actually, the reason why we're putting it is actually for good news and good reason. Sales tax came in over budget in 2010, and as you know, we share approximately 25% of all the sales tax receipts that comes in. By virtue of the Comptroller's Office several years ago, we were required to budget the entire amount of the sales tax coming in and also budget the expense to municipalities. So when we anticipated X amount of money coming in, we put the appropriate amount for the expense to be distributed. Because we received more than we anticipated, which was excellent news for the county, we also have more money to distribute than the budget allowed to the municipalities, to the tune of a little over $3 million. So we made the fourth payment, we made 4 payments on a quarterly basis to municipalities. We made them aware that this is how much we paid them, and there's additional monies, and they know how much they're going to get. And we want to give you a schedule of what the makeup of that $3 million is. To be able to pay them that difference, we have to modify the budget. The monies have come in revenue, but we didn't have the appropriation to pay them out. So what this is doing basically is increasing that line item, increasing the revenue by the sales tax that came in to allow us to pay out that additional funds to the towns and villages and cities who know about this and anticipating receiving those monies.
That would be a good idea if you could get a copy of that, how much each town would get, and we'll give it to Lori so that she can,
There you go.
if there's not enough for people in the room, Lori will put one in your mailbox. Questions from legislators? Mike?
Yeah, Joe, I don't quite remember, but I thought that we budgeted $229 million for the sales tax this past year, and if that's correct, how much actually came in?
We don't have it finalized yet.
Do I remember correctly? Was it $229 for the
That's
budget?
the total, and
That's the
that would
total
take that to
budget.
gross amount, correct.
Okay.
That includes almost $56 million to be paid out.
Right. And do we know how much above the $229 we came in? We don't know that right now?
Not yet, because we have to finalize the accrual for 2010.
Do we have a guesstimate?
We are over, for the county portion, again, not the municipal portion. Municipal portion is $3 million, and that's why we're coming back for that. For the county portion, we're upwards of $9 million over budget.
Okay, good, thank you.
You're welcome. Joel, when would these checks go out to the municipalities?
As soon as it's approved by the legislature in early March, we will get these checks out as soon as possible, right after that.
Okay. Questions from other legislators?
Yes, yeah.
Mike?
On your, on the legislative budget thing, Joel said minus 6.74%.
Yeah,
This should be, because you're taking it from our budget? and
No,
sending
actually,
it out?
what you're looking at is, that's the copy of the
the
adopted
original
legislative budget.
Right.
Right, so the difference is you're seeing increase, decrease is a comparison from the prior years. This doesn't show the actual for 2010. This is the document at the beginning, prior to 2010. So I just wanted to show that so you see where it is contractual expenditure in municipalities, where that's coming from.
Okay. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you very much, sir. You're sticking around, right?
Absolutely. Thank you.
Oh, absolutely, sure. Neil, I guess you're standing in? Okay, back to number 1, which is a supplemental appropriation to the county budget to accommodate an increase in state aid, special delinquency prevention programs, and runaway and homeless youth programs. Motion and second, please.
So move it.
Harvey, Dan. You're up, Neil.
When Youth Bureau does their budget, they guess at what their state aid is because they don't have actual figures yet. Now they know their actual figures. They have to increase these 2 programs by $4,619 in state aid. In order to do that, we have to put up $638 of county taxation. So that's what they're asking here, to increase these two programs by the state aid that's coming in, plus our share.
Okay.
That's good news.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. Questions from other committee members? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you very much. Okay, number 2, John McCary, Director of Real Property. Letter A is a capital project for a tax collection system, Phase 2, $50,000, which will be bonded. Motion and second, please.
Motion.
Harvey? Okay, John.
Yeah, last year we put a tax software system into 40 towns, so 40 towns, and school districts and villages. This part is to actually take the tax bills and put them right up online, and a software for that. So if you pay your taxes by mail, you go online and see if the tax collector received your payment and when it was paid and everything else. Or come April, if you need a copy of your tax bill, or September, you go right online and pull stuff off. And it is very sophisticated, and this is tying all our parts together on our website as far as our parcel information and assessment information, our tax bills and everything else.
Questions? Kevin?
Can you run a list and just say, I want to see all delinquencies in the county, or does it have to be a specific?
It's for public, you only can search one property at a time.
And anybody in the county or anybody anywhere could search anybody's property?
Right.
Since it's all public record?
Public record.
Okay. Any other questions? Mike?
This isn't the first phase, this is the total, 50 stuff the total, or is it more?
This is the second phase.
Second phase, actually.
There's one phase for this phase. First phase involved, explain the first phase again?
The first phase was, we actually put
computers.
Software,
computers and software.
Scanners and everything else. If you notice on your tax bills this year, there's a bar go on bond, go in a tax collector, you go in to pay your taxes, you stick a scanner like a supermarket, bring up your information right on the computer and make sure your credit and payments are correct properly.
Okay. Mike?
Yeah, first phase is all complete. Any problems, any hitches?
People love it. E-villages are just getting involved. E-village taxes are in June this year. They are starting to be trained on the system sometime in April, May.
Okay, projected completion date for phase 2?
Probably 12 months. Because we got 3 cycles. We got village taxes, county, town taxes, and school taxes. So it'll take a full year to complete the project. And we gave each of the towns 2 years to go into the program. And we got probably 80% participation right now.
Any feedback from any of the towns that's negative?
Positive.
All positive. Great, thank you.
So far for these programs.
For these programs.
Any other questions? Hearing none, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Letter B, deed sale parcels?
We got 2 parcels.
Not too many.
Not too many this month. Two parcels left over from the 2010 sale. There's one parcel in the town of Hamptonburg, 21 acres. Our minimum bid is $25,000. We do have a real low bid, and my recommendation is no onto it. The bid is $1,000. Number 2 is 2 parcels side by side on Route 211 in the town of Walkill. Our minimum bid is $4,000. We do have a minimum bid of $4,000. And I recommend we accept number 2 and reject number 1.
Okay. I don't think I called for a motion and second for discussion. Can I get one? Dan? Mike and I stop this. Mike? Question, just the one that we're rejecting, it says residential vacant land. Is it a lot of wetlands on that particularly?
Yes.
It is? Okay.
Twin Arch Road.
Yeah, I know where that is.
And there's power lines going over. Power lines going over at one side of it.
Okay.
Mike, on the one in Walkill, says State Highway 211, vacant land. Where?
You know where Club 211 is?
Yeah.
Club 211?
Yeah.
And coming down towards Middletown on the right side, and it is somewhat wet also.
Okay. That's residential property.
residential property.
But they're both right next to each other?
Yeah.
I mean, so you got actually 200 by 250, right?
Correct.
That was right?
Yeah.
On road frontage?
Right. 100 feet road frontage, 250 depth.
With the Walk Hill parcel, you're right, there is some swamp in that area, but, I mean, that seems like that's highway commercial there. I think that would be a building lot, commercial building lot, wouldn't it?
This, I believe, this lot, the lot next door has been through the cycle a couple times, and I think I sold it 8 or 10 years ago, and now back through tax sale again. And there's a stream running through the center of it, so
Makes it tough.
you need some unique engineering to make it work.
Left side or right side?
Left side if you're leaving town.
Okay.
There's someone built a new 5-level here about 5 years ago, 6 years ago, and one lot right next to it.
Right. Okay.
Any other questions? Hearing none. All in favor of number 2 and not number 1, as recommended? Aye. Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Thank you, John. Okay, number 4, the discussion regarding the Newburgh Armory. Who is filling in for Dave?
Don't all rush at once.
Nobody wants to talk about it?
That's the attorney down there, Mr. Oh, Mr. Brown? Yeah.
Who's next on the guillotine? Who's next?
Now, Warner's going to be here a while.
Yep.
Okay, again, this is for discussion, so floor is yours.
Good, yeah. Give them a synopsis of the last week's events.
He did introduce me.
Oh, you want to introduce yourself for
Sure.
the,
My name is Joseph Mahoney. For those of you who haven't met yet, I'm Assistant County Attorney in the County Attorney's Office.
Give us a quick background.
Essentially, the Newburgh Armory was leased by the county pursuant to a sublease agreement in 1996. In September 1996, we leased it up to stock. Since that time, the county has been in possession of the building and continues to be in possession today. In addition to the lease agreement, there was also a assignment of lease and rent that was executed at the same time, and a tournament agreement, which I think you all are familiar with that.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that. What agreement?
A tournament.
Okay.
Essentially what it is up through, well, back up. In this October of 1997, the county received a letter from Goshen Development requesting that we pay the rent due, the first rent that was due, it was due in 97, to an account, a bank, through wire transfer for M&T. Now, this payment was made pursuant to that request by our landlord. Goshen Development was and is the county's landlord, and the request was done pursuant to that request. Payments from that time forward were paid to that account, essentially wire transfer to the specific account. In July of 2009, our landlord again contacted the county and requested that rental payments for the Army building no longer be paid to that account, be paid to a separate account. And again, this is for Goshen Development. The first account was the primary beneficiary of M&T, and a subsidiary beneficiary of Goshen Development. And the new account is for Provident, had its primary and beneficiary to the account was reversed. I believe that the first payment made to the Provident account was in August of 2009, and from that point, from August of 2009 through May of 2010, payment was made, rental payments were made to that account on the first of each month through wire transfer. On May 28th, 2010, the county received a correspondence from M&T. First correspondence we received.
I'm behind you. Can you
Jeffrey, you want to move on? Go ahead. No problem. Dan, you can come sit here too if you want.
I'll just go over the last section. On May 28th, 2010, the county received a correspondence. The first correspondence we received from M&T. In that correspondence, M&T laid out that there was a default on behalf of Gemma Development. Now, let me give you a quick more background. Prior to our sublease, all right, with Gemma Development, Gemma was actually a lessee of the property. The owner was a Newburgh IDA. Now, there is obviously some sort of agreement, and the IDA was the bondholders, had the bond mortgaged such to Gemma, and in terms of those agreements, the conditions I can't speak to. But what I can tell you is that up through May 28th, 2010, the county had no notification that it was not contacted by M&T, and indicated that a modification of the payment as for August 2009 payment was somehow incorrect or improper. That gives you a quick summary of the background.
Okay. Jimmy, anything to add, or?
Take whatever questions you have.
Okay. First question I had was, since I'll start it, it was in the paper about how the county had the $5.7 million bond. Is that accurate? I mean, looking in the book here, when you look all over indebtedness, it starts in 1996, and there's no mention of any bond that the county has taken. No,
it's the IDA, City of Newburgh IDA, which is now not certified, did the original deal with Gamma for the bond.
Okay, so
that's why we have no knowledge of what that paperwork says or when the bond deal went through. But like every other IDA agreement, to get IDA benefits, the IDA takes actual ownership of the property.
So it's actually factually incorrect that Orange County had the $5.7 million bond for this property.
Correct.
Okay. Other question, Kevin?
Yeah, who are we sending the next payment to?
Go ahead. We've been paying right along to the
Who's the
bank.
next check going to be made out to? Is it going to be made out to M&T or?
No,
it's Wells Fargo.
Wells Fargo
has taken
now
over the trustee.
Okay. And it's your opinion that that's the proper way to go, to send it to Wells Fargo?
Absolutely, it is proper.
Okay. Now, you got a letter from someone saying Gemma had defaulted? That was from M&T?
Yes.
And are they saying that we owe them the money or Gemma owes the money? What was the content of that letter?
Essentially, the content of the letter was advising that, this is going off memory, so yeah.
Right.
That at that point, M&T was the trustee for the bondholders. And that letter advised that they had not received payment for March, April, and May of 2010. Now, however much that payment is from the rental paid by the county IDI.
Okay, so our checks were always going to a bank, not to Gemma directly?
The payments were bought via wire transfer.
Right, but
yes.
To the bank trustee, or Gemma's trustee?
They went to M&T Bank until Finance Department got contacted and asked the payments get switched to Providence Bank. So they went to Providence Bank for 9 months. Right? M&T Bank was aware of that and were getting paid from Gamma for 9 months. Then Gamma stopped paying, and that's when M&T came to us after 3 months. I think legally they had to wait 3 months before they can do any type of action. They came to us and said, hey, legally, we want the money coming back to us. We went to the law department. We got M&T Bank to agree we're held harmless, and the checks went to, I don't know, for 1 or 2 payments, don't hold me to that, to M&T Bank until such time as Wells Fargo took over the holdings from M&T. So now they go to Wells Fargo.
And to this date, no one's called and said, you owe us that money in delinquent as a county. not our debt to pay.
No, actually, we received written notice that the bondholders would not seek to file suit.
Super.
And what Jimmy said is that the notice that we received in May was important because that's what triggered the assignment. The assignment, that I mentioned earlier, was conditional. It wasn't an absolute assignment. The condition was notice. That specific notice we received in May of 2000.
The second question I had was, is it common practice for a leaseholder to send their monthly payments, rent, to a bank directly rather than to the landlord? Or is that, I mean, it seemed to me like that was just for convenience, so he didn't have to touch it and transfer it back and have the money get lost. Is that common practice?
I would say every deal is different, especially you get the IDA benefits involved and they become the owner of the property. I wouldn't comment on this particular transaction as opposed to any other real estate transaction that we do. Everyone has their own different nuances.
Mike A?
Yeah, this is very confusing, and I've probably got a million questions. And I don't know that I'm going to be able to ask a million questions, but first of all, the original trustee was M&T Bank, correct?
Yeah, well, M&T is considered Manufacturers and Traders Trust.
Okay, but they were the trustee for the bonds.
The bondholder, yes.
Okay. A little I know about finance, is it not correct that the only person that can redirect payments is that exact trustee? That's
No.
a true statement?
No.
It's not a true statement?
No.
Okay. The documents that redirected the payments, do we have copies of those documents?
On which the funds that were received by Finance in August of 2009.
That's right. Do we have a copy of those documents that ask us to make the redirection of the payments?
Yes, we do.
Can the legislature see that?
I don't see why not.
Okay. Do we have the name of the person that redirected the payments? I read in the paper that it was, quote, a low-level clerk, unquote.
Who? I'm sorry, I want to make sure I understand the
Someone
question.
That was in a record. That was in the time, reported in the time.
I want to make sure I
I don't
understand the
think we
question.
have any low-level clerks.
Okay. Do we know the name of the person that redirected the payments?
Yes.
Is that something that we can find out about? Can we know the name of that person?
Yes.
Who was?
I don't have the name with me.
Okay. Am I under a
Is that a...
Am I under a misconception? At least when I first started here, I thought last year we did some kind of review. Finance came in and told us only the Commissioner of Finance handles checks, no one under him. How could a lower level person be making these decisions if only the Commissioner of Finance can do this?
Well, the Commissioner of Finance has since put out a written directive, only the Deputy Commissioner or the Commissioner could be involved in any such transaction like this moving forward.
So maybe
The only mistake the clerk in finance made was not getting something written from M&T Bank. Okay, because when she got the initial request to change the payment, she said, give it to me in writing. She got a phone call. She said, give it to me in writing. She got it in writing.
So we have that in writing.
That's what I said.
Yeah, you already said, then we will get copies of it.
Right.
Yes, he said.
And, in my opinion, the only mistake was that when M&T Bank called up questioning the payments going to a different place now, she took down the gentleman's name from the bank who she talked to, made a record of it, all right, which we have, but she didn't get anything in writing saying, okay. So it went okay for 9 months based on that phone call until Gamma stopped paying. Okay, so once Gamma stopped paying, that's when the bank said, we have to get our money, and that's when they went after looking for the $181,000. But we're held harmless. We had a conversation with the bank. They waited 3 months till they could go to court. Once they did, I don't know if they went to court, but once they were legally entitled, that's when we switched it back to them.
Okay. Who did we have a conversation with? M&T or the new trustee that took over?
M&T at that time.
And that's the one that's holding us harmless.
Right.
And we have that documentation. Can we get a copy of that letter holding us harmless also?
The entity that held us harmless was the 100% bondholder. not the trustee. It was the bond.
It was the bond, excuse me.
It was the entity.
Who was that?
Great West.
Great
Mike?
Western Financial. Okay.
And also, there is documentation in the original contract agreement that says that upon written notification of the change of who the money's supposed to be paid to, that's in black and white too, right?
The original documentation, the rider to our sublease from '96, contains a provision saying the county has an obligation to make rental payments to our landlord. Okay? Read that in conjunction with the assignment. All right? The assignment is a conditional assignment. It needs to be triggered. Right? The triggering mechanism within the assignment is notification. All right? Specifically, the language says we don't have the right to look into whether the actual default they're claiming took place. The actual notification of the default is what's relevant. Now that occurred in May 28th of 2010. Prior to that, our obligation was under the actual lease documents. The rider specifically, you'll see, has an obligation for the county to pay the landlord. The landlord requested in the writing that we pay M&T to this account. And you're right, it is convenient. It was convenient for our landlord to do that because they would accept it and defer part of it to him as a subsidiary benefit. He's a beneficiary to the account. The fact that we made payments to M&T pursuant to that written request from our landlord, and again we changed the payment pursuant to a second written request from our landlord.
Okay, and we have a copy of that second written request. Okay. Mike?
Can I make a request? I asked for a lot of documentation, and you said we can get it. I'll request that at some point the legislature will get it, and maybe we can revisit this issue if we have further questions in the future.
Sure, absolutely. Are you keeping track of what we're expecting?
He will have the entire file.
Okay. Mike first.
There's a lot of questions I have too. Some of them been answered already. You said we changed and started paying to the landlord. Well, you just said that the IDA owned the property. Aren't they the landlord?
No.
IDA would. Is that because of the attornment agreement?
No.
They hold the bond.
Yeah, IDA is the owner of the property, and they lease the property to Gavin Development. Gavin Development then sublease the property to the County of Orange.
That's why there's an attorney agreement. So there's been really no default, or there has been?
No, there was no default or breach of the lease agreement. The default, let me make sure I'm understanding your question correctly. When you say default on behalf of Gamma Development?
I would guess we're paying to him, and then, I don't know who, we're paying to M&T, now we're paying to Carchetta. My biggest question is, I don't understand why no one's after the $181,000 that we paid.
They're after somebody, but not us.
You say just forget about it. I don't mean you're saying it that way. You say we sent the money to him. He didn't pay the money, and they're forgiving us, and the bank's forgiving him. So we just gave him $181,000, and nobody gave it.
No, we didn't say that. We didn't say that.
That's all I want to know.
That's certainly not true.
We said the county is held harmless.
Right.
Okay? That's all we said.
And I think you'll see.
Legally,
For not being paid, for the mortgage.
legally, we are held harmless.
Right. And that is, the reason for that is, it should be some litigation is the entity, injured entity would pursue a cause of action against that entity or person that he believes caused the harm. Wasn't that us?
So Jim, and they're saying
that's
for them to decide. That's for them to decide. Anything else, Mike?
You can go somewhere else.
Okay, Dan?
I was just, as I'm hearing this go round and round, the thing that's in my head is if and when Gamma goes in through bankruptcy and there were other creditors there looking to Gamma to get reimbursed, we are held harmless on one end, but on the other end, this $180,000, there might be, employees get first grab at any money that's there. So I'm curious how we're gonna protect ourselves in that kind of scenario. I don't know.
We could stay here for a few hours discussing hypotheticals, but at this point, we are held harmless from the person that was looking to get the $181,000.
And the future payments now that we're making to Wells Fargo now.
Yes,
We're making these payments now. And Gamma goes under, and he has creditors. Will they be looking at those payments that we're making here to, I don't know, I know you don't have
That's
answers to these
That's
questions.
right, that's for them to go after the banks. I mean, we just continue making our payments so they don't kick us out. Jeff?
Thank you. I want to go back to the beginning. I'm not clear about the $5.7 million bond with the county initially.
No, Newburgh IDA.
All right, Newburgh IDA, which has title to the property still, but you mentioned is no longer operative. There was some word you used.
Decertified.
Decertified.
I know they're in the process of trying to get recertified, but
That makes
they were
sense.
on a list, last year's list of a few IDAs that were decertified in the state. That's how I became aware of that now.
Well, it makes the confusing situation even more confusing. But let me get to how this all came to the attention of the public and to the legislature, right? Turns out, and correct me if I'm wrong, right, that somebody in the finance department, after getting a letter, took it upon themselves to change the protocol of a $60,000 monthly payment. Is that accurate?
I don't know what it's protocol of the payment, but
Well, protocol
we had a
is-
request, we'll repeat it again, we had a request from the landlord, right, who was entitled to the money, okay? She said, get it in writing, we put it in writing. She then had a conversation after that, we sent payments to his bank, Gamma's bank, and M&T called up, like I said, she should have got that conversation in writing, but she did have the gentleman's name, the date he called, and for 9 months after that, M&T Bank had no trouble with us paying according to the request of the landlord. Is that correct?
Yes. And that's because presumably the payments were being made by him, right?
Yes.
Okay, but it's not exactly, it's foreseeable that he could not make payments. It seems to me that procedurally there was a problem. It's actually hard for me to even believe that somebody in the finance department would get a request to change who they're paying $60,000 to and not bring it up to Joel Kleinman. It's hard for me to believe that Joel Kleinman wouldn't then ask or inform the county executive or you or somebody in law. And from what I'm hearing, none of that happened, right? Nobody was informed. There's
No
one person.
one had a complaint until 12 months later. Okay?
Well, I have a complaint. Even if it worked out smoothly, I would have a complaint with somebody feeling that bold to make that kind of financial decision on behalf of the county without clarifying it, discussing it with somebody in the a superior commissioner or
And
something.
as I stated, there's written procedures now. The only two people is the commissioner and the deputy commissioner.
Right. But that's after the fact.
Well, I can't go backwards, John.
Right, I understand.
Okay.
There's just so many dates and so many banks and so many different issues here. I'll tell you, what really is needed, I think, in addition to this committee's review and this legislature's review, is an independent review. It's too bad that we don't have an Inspector General. This would be a perfect opportunity for the Inspector General to go over all these details and to issue a report back to the legislature.
Okay, you got your shot in.
Since we don't have that mechanism in place, it presents more difficulties. I don't know, maybe maybe the state ought to be involved. I haven't come to that conclusion yet. I still want to get more facts.
It's a basic landlord-tenant agreement, Jeffrey.
Exactly. Look, I know about basic landlord-tenant agreements, and this is far from a basic landlord-tenant agreement.
It's unique in the beginning.
This is unique in a whole
landlord doesn't
variety.
get the payment.
But this is a whole, right, exactly. This is a whole, there's all sorts of things that differentiate this from the classic landlord-tenant agreement. And we have an IDA, you have intervening parties, you have several banks, you have counties with different the county having different people to pay. I mean, it's not a straightforward landlord-tenant situation at all. I'm concerned about the lack of oversight in it, and I think that though I'm somewhat reassured and happy to hear that at least we have one source that says that they're not going to come after us for $180,000. That we have what was the expression? Hold harmless. Thank you. But I don't know that somebody's not going to be out the $180,000 and ultimately they might come back to us. It's a serious concern that I have. And let's see what else I have here. Who was the letter addressed to? The letter that changed, the request to have the money sent to Carcietta's company, gentleman, right? Who was that letter addressed to?
It was an email.
Who was the email address?
Yes, it was.
To the clerk?
Yes, it was.
To the clerk's name? It was directly to the clerk's, not to the county executive, not to the commissioner of finance, not to anybody other than the clerk.
It's just to the clerk. Email, call, as Jimmy said, initially the initial contact was via telephone. The third one said, listen, if you want to change your back, then you have to put that right.
Well, I don't want to hang the clerk out to dry, even if there is a mistake, and evidently from my way of thinking there is a mistake, but there should be additional accountability. And I'm glad that at least after the fact that you changed the protocol, changed the procedure, but that doesn't still excuse a bad policy that led to this event.
Dan?
Yeah, one issue that seems unclear to me really has to do with the IDA of Newburgh, the City of Newburgh IDA, the county, and GEMA. And what obligations did what obligations did M&T Bank make of GEMA through the IDA to secure that they would get their money back? At the point that the renovations were being done to that building, right, which is what I think most of the loan was about. That's why we're paying the money. It's not for the purchase of the Armory building. That was only a pittance, really. It was to take that building, improve that building, renovate that building for the purpose of moving offices in there. When that agreement was struck, was the county an interested party in that building? Did the county send any type of reassurance to GEMA in writing to help them achieve the bonding that they need to get the renovations done?
Well, we have to go back to Joe Rampy's records.
Yeah, because
1996. I don't know if you're asking if he sent a letter of support on behalf of GEMA.
Right. Yeah.
For IDA funding.
Yeah. Let me.
That's possible.
Yeah, I'll clarify.
Just from our own IDA, when different companies come to before the Orange County IDA, we tell them to go to the local supervisor, town supervisor, and the local school board and get letters of support. So that's a basic thing. City of Newburgh IDA, I don't know how they operate. I can't comment on that. And whether they asked the county exec at that time, Joe Rampy, to submit a letter of support, I don't know.
Yeah, I want to be a little bit more specific, though. I'm not talking about a general letter of, hey, support this refurbishment of this building. I'm talking about in order to secure the loan, in order to make that something that was even securable, something that they could foresee wanting to do this and know that they had some type of backing to get their money back. Did the county play a role in writing of guaranteeing that they would be the leaseor of the property at the time?
I believe the sublease is a part of the closing documents with the IDA.
So before the IDA granted money to GEMA, or GEMA, is it GEMA or GEMA?
GEMA.
GEMA, all right. the IDA determined that they would be able to loan that money to Gemma, going and getting bonding and whatever had to be done, based on the fact that they had a pretty solid contract with a reputable and still to be reputable municipality, the County of Orange.
And I believe there was also a resolution sent by the legislature.
Okay.
And one thing too, Dan, I think at the time this all was transpiring was just after Newburgh lost the county jail project, because that property, I believe, was one of the candidates for the jail in Newburgh, so that when the jail was selected to go to where it is now, I believe the
repayment of the renovation fees by being the group that was going to have a lease agreement for an extended period of time. And so the IDA or M&T or whoever the bondholders were, and that's a single source, I think, was depending on the county payments to make the renovation available. So I think that's one issue that's there. The fact that it was changed over or not changed over, I would imagine that the finance commissioner, I don't want to speak for him, probably they get phone calls all the time of, hey, we were LLC this yesterday, we're LLC that today, can you change this? I think the clerk probably did the right thing in saying, could you get that in writing, whatever. I'm not going to blame an employee for making the decision on switching things, because I think that probably happens every single day. This issue is specific and an issue, I think, to me, because of that commitment that the county made to the IDA to assure the payments in order for the renovation to be complete. I think that's why we're here. It's not because the landlord got paid and somebody else could have got paid or whatever. It has to do with the origin of the original renovation funding. That's the issue. And I'm not really sure that you could write a letter saying, well, we're holding you harmless of this and everything else, but the county made certain commitments, and I think that's what I'm interested in.
I think they just use that lease as any other, whether it's the county or any other entity that's renting a property. Anybody coming before IDAs of anywhere is going to come with documentation proving their net worth. So, but I don't think you can use that to go after the county or anyone else who rents a property just because I'm signing a 20-year lease and you're coming to me, hey, I already have the building rented. We have those projects coming in now, but, not one single person on the IDA board ever brought up, a scenario where, well, what happens if they all vacate the building? Are we going to go after them? Well, if they vacated the building, they're either bankrupt or they moved on to a better place. Hopefully, you're able to rent it again. But I'm not a lawyer, but I don't think you can go after the renter in that situation. But certainly, as the IDA board, you're going to make sure that the owner looking for the benefits is coming in with some documentation that he's not going to have, or she's not going to have an empty building. Okay?
And don't forget that these are just some of the closing documents, if you will, that were involved in the transaction. I'm sure there were other financing documents that aren't before you today that securitizes the bond. So you would think, since you're dealing with real properties, there's going to be assignment of the mortgage or something like that to securitize the whole package. The lease adds additional collateral, if you will, to the bondholders, which to some extent, this is, I believe, a 20-year lease with 2 5-year renewals. That sort of guarantees, if you will, for the bondholders that there is sufficient money going to come in for the 30 years to pay off the bond. But that is, I would say, secondary collateral, because the first primary would be the building itself with this improvement.
The real property.
So you have to look at the full package. This is one part of the package, if you will.
Mike A. first.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, again, I'm very happy that we have a letter holding us harmless. But unlike Mr. Dupuy, my concern is with the procedures we had in place and how we let a low-level person make a decision of switching money. Now, we've changed those procedures, you said. Did we change them because of that exact situation back then?
No, we just changed them now.
Just now?
No, Joel, and you can obviously talk to him whenever you want, but when we had a conversation about this last week, we asked Joel, all right, what's the procedure now? So, no, it's me or Jody being the deputy commissioner. So, I showed him, right? Well, we told verbally. I said, put it in writing. So, it's in writing. All right, that the only people that can do this now is the deputy commissioner or the commissioner. But when it happened, Joel said he changed it with her verbally.
Right, so you're saying this change just occurred? This change didn't occur 3 months ago, 6 months ago, over the last week or two, maybe?
When it came to light,
okay, that's where I'm confused, because I thought last year we were told that the only person that could do this was the commissioner.
You can talk to the commissioner on that. I don't know whether he had a specific recollection. I think I was present at the meeting when he gave his presentation, but whether that answer he gave you back then fits perfectly into this situation, I'm not sure.
You refer to the clerk as she.
Yes.
As a woman?
Yes.
Does she still work for the county, or did I read in the paper she doesn't work for the county anymore?
Oh, shit.
Well, actually, we're getting into personnel issues that really need to be in executive session, so to the extent you want to limit that for the point of keeping an open session.
Okay. I was told before that we can get the name of that person?
Yes.
Okay. That could be revealed to us at any point when you get the information.
I'll get it for you in 5 minutes.
I think he has to confer with the county attorney on that first, because you're dealing with, I'm not sure where you're going with this, but I think he has to confer with the county attorney.
You know what, I'll step back, I won't go anywhere with it. I'm not really thrilled with all of this, and I will look forward to get all the documents.
Dan?
Just to follow on what my colleague Mr. Depew said and the legislative attorney, there's lots of inferences here that the county was guaranteeing these bonds, but the county was not guaranteeing these bonds.
No.
Right. Okay.
Just guaranteeing our monthly rental payment.
That sort of does says it right there in the employment agreement, right? I mean, the county's there for 30 years, he could default, we still have our lease there, and we're still paying. So they have guarantees, the bank had guarantees that we'll be there for a long time, no matter who owns the property. That's what that employment agreement said. My question is, it sounds like, from Dan asking the questions and about the clerk who made this change, it's never happened before then, has it? If the reasoning for it just changed now, you're telling me that clerk's never changed any payments going out to anybody else before?
I didn't say that.
No, well, it sounds like that because you just changed the policy. Because there was never been a problem, or never been a problem now renewal style or something. I'm just concerned that if you just changed it now, has she made payment switches before that? We don't know that.
Jeffrey?
Yeah. Joel, you right there? Did this clerk that worked under your jurisdiction, did that person ask you what to do, or did that person take it upon themselves to change who they're paying $65?
I have to be honest, at that point, I don't recall when this transacted what the approval was. Was I asked or not? I can't say it was or wasn't.
At the point you found out, what did you do?
We put into place, as Mr. MacDonald said, a verbal approval for changes from that point forward.
Independently, or did you speak to Jim MacDonald, or did you go speak to Eddie Diane? I'm just curious how that process worked. What the chain of command is in your jurisdiction.
Well, within policies within each department, we have the ability to make procedural changes.
Okay, and there was policy about, there was no existing policy about changing to prevent a clerk from making that independent decision? I mean, the guy, we all knew the guy was kind of he was in the press, right? He had some shaky financial situations. We know that we have monthly payments. I mean, it's just common sense tells you.
Do you call him shaky or bad luck or economy or,
sense,
let's not just say shaky is not a good word.
I meant an economic uncertainty. There was some economic uncertainty. That was the spirit of
I mean, Mr. Berkeley, unless you have facts to date, I think
is that a legal opinion you're asking me? Let me continue my inquiry, all right? I mean, I understand you might give me some advice. Right, I want to put on the table while we're sorting this out, that there evidently was no policy in the finance department to prevent it. That's why I had to come up with one after the fact. You know, I'm unhappy. That's what it comes down to. I'm unhappy with the way this worked out. It's very complicated, and I'm looking forward to, like all the other people in the legislature, getting the full docket of information so we can study it and see how we could try to come up with some policy decisions to make improvements and have a full and thorough review of all the facts.
That's what this meeting is for, to start that. And Katie, did you have a question? Okay. Any other questions from any other legislators? Dan?
One last question. Has the director of personnel or commissioner of personnel been involved in reviewing this particular employee and making sure that there's no ties or any benefits to this decision being made by that person?
No.
Okay.
And also coincidentally, it was right during my campaign season. It's changed.
Any other questions? Pat? Okay. Hearing no other questions, last statement if you want to say something, or?
Well, knowing what we know now, if the clerk had called you that day that she got the phone call from Gamma, where would the checks have been sent?
We would have been required to modify the payment to pay our landlord. We have the obligation, contractual obligation to pay our landlord. To do otherwise would have been put us in breach of the lease. We would have paid an entity and been required to also pay our landlord. That would have been just unwise.
Just one final thing on, only because I was chair of the site selection committee, and one of the things in the article was that the legislature picked the site. Just for the record, the site selection committee whittled down 9 sites down to 4 sites, eventually picking the site where the college is now. The site selection committee made the recommendation to the county exec, who signed off on that site, and we also made the recommendation to the legislature that signed off on that site. So technically, the article was correct in that the legislature picked that site, but also the site selection committee was overwhelmingly the people that picked that site, and the county executive also picked that site. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much for coming, and you may be back.
Thank you, Joe.
Again. And Jimmy, as soon as you could get that to Lori so that she can give copies to everybody's mailbox, it would be great. Okay, last thing on the agenda, Bennett Kielson. Okie dokie. Everyone should have bring with them today.
Would you like it?
Lee, this is Scott Oling from Bennett Hills. We've had one before. He's right behind me somewhere.
Oh, yes.
Scott. That's Scott.
That's Scott.
That's Scott.
Yes, any seat you'd like.
I bet you that seat's...
Well, actually, that's the hot seat.
That's the hot seat.
That's the hot one there. And the next one, too.
Nick must be on...
We fixed the leak.
Nick must be on the golf course out in Westchester.
He's on a plane flying back from 80-degree Orlando.
Oh, nice.
I told him that.
Okay, again, more discussion. An overview of the 2009 financials. So, the floor is yours.
Oh, thank you very much. Good afternoon, everybody. My name, for the record, is Scott Oling. I'm the partner in charge of the audit, the annual external audit that takes place for Orange County each year as required under law. I'm here today, as Mr. Benton said, to present the results of, believe it or not, the December 31st, 2009 audit. Just from the top, I just want to say that, this presentation is about 6-7 months later than it normally would be. I was actually supposed to be here first off about a month ago until Mother Nature kicked in. But even that would have been 6 months later than usual. And, basically what happened was the county implemented a new accounting software program back in the middle of 2009. There were some delays in that conversion and getting everything, ready for this year's audit. So this year's audit for 2009 got delayed several months until all the records could be, updated and fixed and converted. So we were in here this year in about October doing the audit. Normally we're in during the month of March, and usually, we turn the report around within, 4 to 8 weeks after we get out of the audit. So hopefully, the processes now that have been in place for a year will improve, and we'll be able to generate the 2010 audit report a little more quicker than, and more in line with the way it's been done in the past. So with that, I just want to take you briefly through a summary of some of the highlights of what happened in the general fund for 2009. Also, for the record, we issued a clean opinion on the county's finances, which is what's known as an unqualified opinion on the county's financial statement. That's the highest form of assurance that an auditor provides any client. It basically says that we believe, that the financial statements fairly present the results of operations for this fiscal year. So the main fund that you operate is the general fund. The general fund is presented in summary form on page 26 of the Comprehensive Annual Financial Report document. And what this page shows you is a summary of the budgetary items. This is the income statement for the general fund. It's presented, as you can see, in 4-column format. The first column is the original budget. So this was the budget that was adopted at the end of 2008 for the operations for the 2009 year. And the top part of the page gives you your various revenue sources that you expected to support your budget operations. And you can see $83 million expected from the levy of real property taxes, $230 million expected from, on the gross end, for sales tax. That's the amount before your distribution to your towns and villages. Also hotel tax in there. Various departmental income, various fees and charges from your various departments. And then state aid and federal aid, primarily for health department programs, social service programs, the anticipated state and federal aid for those programs. So you can see the original estimate was about $503 million. In the middle part of that page are the expenditures, what you expected to spend your resources on. And you can see certain things, general government support type expenses, those are administrative type expenses of the government. $48 million in education costs, primarily contributions to the college and the education transportation program. Public safety is obviously the operations of the sheriff's department. The health department, $56 million. Economic opportunity and development at $199 million. That's the social services agency primarily. So you see the expected expenditures were $527 million. And then a few lines down from that, you have various transfers in and out. These are monies that are moved between funds. So you have other funds that you operate. These are funds that are moved out of the general fund to do things in other funds, and they net to about $7 million. So you see that the bottom line in the budget column, the first column was a bracketed $31 million. So that means when the budget was adopted, you expected that you would be spending more than what you took in revenue. In New York State, we've got to have a balanced budget, except maybe the state itself. But in New York, we have everybody under the state level has to have a balanced budget. You balance the budget by what we call appropriated fund balance. So taking previously accumulated savings that the county has inured over the years it's been in existence, and apply that essentially to reduce property taxes. I mean, that's essentially what appropriated fund balance does. Otherwise, you would have had to find an additional $31 million of revenue, either in property tax levy, fees, various other things, or you would have had to cut expenditures by $31 million, or some combination of the two. But that's how you see that the budget comes down to a balanced figure in the first column. The second column is the final budget. So as you go through the year, amendments happen to the budget that come from the Commissioner's office. Resolutions come before you to make either budget transfers, moving resources from one line to another. That doesn't impact the total budget, just moving things from one category to another. Or there's an amendment made to the total budget where a new revenue source comes in that was not anticipated when the budget was adopted, and so the appropriations are also amended because presumably you're spending that on something that you also didn't anticipate. And sometimes you have an expenditure that comes into play that there is no revenue source where you just got to pay it, potentially a tax certiorari or stuff like that. So that's where you may have to pull additional money from your fund balance, your savings, in order to meet that obligation. So you had a little of all three of those scenarios in the second column. You see that the revenue estimate was revised from $503 million to $538 million, primarily in the state and federal aid lines. A lot of that is in health department, social services department areas. As well, the expenditure side of the budget was also modified by about $35 million, up to $563 million, again to account for certain things that happened during the year. Some of this was also to account for the additional stimulus monies that were received during 2009. So as you see, when you get down to the bottom of that second column, you still have a bracketed $32 million, so a little more fund balance was utilized to keep the budget in balance. But the plan, the final plan, said that you anticipated using $32 million of previously accumulated savings to keep this budget in balance. That was the plan. The third column is what actually happened. So in the third column, you see that total revenues came in at $522 million, compared to a budget estimate, a final budget estimate of $538 million. So revenues came in about $17 million short. That's a net figure. There's information within these numbers that you should be aware of. One of the things that's in the revenue numbers is the first round of stimulus money that came in, especially the enhanced FMAP money that came into the county. And overall, the revenues in this group were essentially enhanced by about $15 million of stimulus money that was not in the original budget. So if you took that example, and if that money had not come in, the revenue shortfall would not have been $16 million, would have been about $30 million. All right. The other shortfall in revenues, I think we're all aware of, was that sales tax did not come in as anticipated during 2009. The budget for sales tax was around $223 million in 2009. Again, that's the gross sales tax before the distribution to the municipalities. It came in, I believe, about $9 million short of budgetary expectations. So that was also a big hit to the revenue side of the budget. On the expenditure side of the budget, you see you did have savings. Expenditures came in, as you can see, about $510 million. So compared to the revised budget of $563, expenditures came in about $52 million less than what was anticipated. Now, some of that has a revenue impact, and you can see there was some shortfalls up top in the state aid line. A lot of the programs you run have federal and state reimbursements to them. Certain percentages, some programs 100%, 50%. all different routes. So obviously, if you have savings on the expenditure side, the revenue that you anticipate will also not reach the revenue level because you didn't spend the money for whatever reason. So when you come down in that third column, the actual column, the third number up from the bottom, you see a positive $9 million. So that meant for this fiscal year, 2009, revenues still came in better than you had budgeted. Revenues came in better than your expenditures, more revenues versus expenditures by $9 million. But remember what I said, $15 million or so was additional stimulus money, that was in the revenue. There was also on the, about two-thirds of the way down in that other financing sources and uses section, you see the transfer in line, and you see the variance was about $6 million. And that's because the county took in about $5.6 million that it had in other funds and brought those monies into the general fund for this year. So between that money and the stimulus money that came in, we're talking about $20 million or so that came into the general fund that was not anticipated as part of the budget. So again, if those funds had not come in, that $9 million surplus of revenues over expenditures would have actually been a deficiency of about $11 million. and your fund balance would have been diminished by about $11 million. So that $9 million to the good for 2009 added to the beginning fund balance in total that was $163 million, brings the total fund balance for the general fund to $172 million. If you flip back to page 22, you'll see a lot of small numbers. To try to squeeze all these numbers on a page is an interesting feat. But if you look at the first column, the general fund column, you'll see that $172 million is the second number up from the bottom. And fund balance is just the difference between your assets and your liabilities. Governmental accounting, this balance sheet, for those of you who run your own businesses, is not going to look like a regular business's balance sheet. Governmental accounting only requires us to report current assets and current liabilities. So there's no long-term assets on here, no capital assets, no infrastructure, that's not on here, nor is your debt. That's not on here. It's just current assets and current liabilities. So you see at the top half of this column are your assets for the general fund, $314 million, primarily comprised of cash and investments, various property taxes that are owed to the county at $52 million, various sales tax that's owed at the end of December, about $22 million, $63 million in various federal and state monies that are owed to the county. So, and some monies owed from a component unit, the water authority. So, about total there, $314 million in assets. You then see your liability section. Again, current liabilities, mostly in the form of accounts payable, normal bills, and those types of items that are due at the end of the fiscal year. There's money that's owed to other funds as cash is borrowed between your various funds here. So the general fund is owed some cash back there. You have money that you owe to the school district based on the collection patterns. You have to make the schools whole normally early in the following fiscal year. So $142 million in liabilities. So the $142 in liabilities from the $314 in assets, and that's where we have the $172 million in fund balance. Now, as you can see, you have a good 15 or 20 items that make up your fund balance. And your fund balance is split between what we call reserved fund balance and unreserved fund balance. Reserved fund balance are amounts that are reserved either under law, general municipal law, or are reserved under what we call, I guess you can call it accounting law, or have to be reserved under accounting guidelines. So as we go down this list, you see that the first number, $1.9 million, is reserved for prepaid expenditures. That's one of those accounting reserves. You have to prepay your health insurance, usually a month in advance. So this is essentially some of that paid for in advance. It's also the retirement bill, the state retirement bill that you pay in December. Part of it really covers the next fiscal year because it runs on state fiscal year, which is March. So you're prepaying 3 months of that. Since the cash is out the door, we have to reserve fund balance. So that's why that portion of fund balance is reserved for that. You have encumbered money of about $4.4 million. So those are purchase orders that are in progress at the end of the year that were not completed. So those purchase orders roll over so you can finish paying for those items in the new fiscal year. I'm just going to hit some of the bigger items. There's $7.9 million reserved for future capital projects. So that is money that the only way that it can come out of here is by legislative action. Money goes into this reserve from projects that are completed and have money left over in them. They go into this reserve. And then as new projects are needed, a resolution comes before the legislature to pull money out of this reserve and use this as a way to finance certain projects rather than bonding them and having interest costs. That this is your own money that you're using. So that $7.9 million of fund balance is set aside for that. $26 million of the fund balance is reserved for what we call accounts and loans receivable. This is another accounting reserve. As I mentioned up top in the asset section, you saw that there's a receivable from the component unit of $26.9 million, and you see this is the same number down here. That is primarily money owed from the water authority, from monies that have been advanced to them over some 20-odd year period. Because right now there's no collectability situation where they would be able to repay that level of funds at this time, we reserve the fund balance. Because the money's in a receivable, we don't want that receivable to be treated as if it's $26 million available for you to use because you don't actually have the cash. And there's no way that we could see at the current time, in looking at the Water Authority's financial statements, that they would be able to repay those resources right now. So that fund balance, again, is set aside and can't be used until the cash can come back into the county. Moving further down that column, another $34.4 million of the fund balance, so almost about 20-some-odd% of the fund balance was what we call, now we go into the unreserved. So these are management intended of the use of these funds. $34.4 million was used as property tax relief for the 2010 fiscal year. That's what you use to balance the 2010 plan. There are further, as you can see, a group of designations. So these are management's intent for these things. Money was set aside years ago for the Orange County Water Authority. So each year, money is drawn down from, right now there's $12 million left. I believe it originally, Neil, may have had about $25 million about 20 years ago. So basically every year, in order to fund the operating activities of the Water Authority, funds are drawn down from this pot that was, again, set aside by legislative resolution years ago to support that operation. Usually when there was a higher interest rate being earned, the money earned on these funds almost offset the amount that was needed to fund operations. But now with interest rates near zero, the money is getting depleted. I am also aware that for the 2011 budget that was just adopted, I believe some of these resources were also taken for other purposes.
$2 million?
I think it was $5 million. I believe $5 million of that was taken for that purpose in 11. Again, these are designations, so management, legislature can change these at any time. There's no legal restrictions on these funds. The next big item in the designations is $5.1 million designated for tobacco settlement. Each year you receive money from the tobacco settlement. You're one of the few counties in New York that did not securitize that money like many others did and take the money all up front. So you are getting a distribution each year. So it's been the practice to take the current year distribution and save it for a future year. So this money is set aside and is usually used in the succeeding budget to balance your operations. You had $2.9 million designated for tax certioraries to pay various tax certiorari claims. I believe some of this was used to pay the Dynegy claim, and this is what's left, and I believe, again, some more of this money was taken in balancing the 2011 budget that you're in right now. $5 million was also set aside a couple of years ago for Medicaid. At the time, Medicaid costs were really growing substantially. In the last couple of years, the Medicaid growth for the counties was capped at, I believe, about 3%. And I now also believe that, again, some of this money was also taken in balancing the 2011 budget, as not as much was needed for the Medicaid because now it's a more definitive amount that you are liable for each year. There was $1 million set aside for state retirement system expenditures. The purpose of this was, at the time that this was established, the retirement contribution rates were very low. As we all know, the retirement systems, much like the rest of us, did not have a couple of good years a few years ago. Hopefully it's rebounding now. And what's happening is the contribution rates to the employees' retirement system have really skyrocketed. I think they're up over 50 or 60% just in the last 2 years. So again, the intent was to have this money set aside so when those rates jumped, rather than having to get all the money from the taxpayers that year, you would be able to draw on this set of resources and limit the pain that added cost for the pension system was going to be. And then there was also $5 million set aside for what we call OPEB, other post-employment benefits. This is the money that you provide your retired employees in retirement in health costs. some of this money was to be set aside for that. I believe some of that was used in balancing the 2011 budget. Currently, New York State does not allow the funding of the OPEB obligation. There was talk about 2 years ago that the state would establish an irrevocable trust where municipalities could put money into that trust and let it grow. Maybe it would be managed by the state, hopefully maybe better than the pension system, and that money would be there so that down the road, when, years down the road as these funds build up, you would now have a source of money to help you with your retiree health benefits. That was the intent. New York does not allow it right now, so even if you wanted to fund your OPEB obligations, there is no way to do it. So when you take that $172 million total fund balance that I was talking about for the general fund, and you back out this myriad of pieces that I just went through, that left you with undesignated fund balance of about $62 million, which is about 10% of your overall general fund operating budget. I believe you have some requirements to maintain 7%. Neil, is that correct? Yeah. So you are over that. I would just caution you that obviously, right now, obviously I'm talking about 2009 numbers. I don't know what the 2010 numbers are. Obviously, we haven't been in to do the audit yet. I'm sure they are probably not as good as the 2009 numbers were that generated, some of this surplus that you were able to still add a small amount to your total fund balance. It's likely that your fund balance will be diminished somewhat in 2010. And obviously, if fund balance diminishes, then we're going to, you're in a good position right now because you do have a strong fund balance position. So you're able to weather this current economic climate better than a lot of other counties in New York State right now. But obviously, a path of having to start using your fund balance and eating into that will impact you as we go forward, through the 2011 year and as you, prepare, to begin the 2012 budget process. So with that was a lot of numbers in a short time. I'd be glad to take any questions. Absolutely. Anybody has? That's what's next. Questions?
Why do we carry the water authority money as a receivable, that just short of $27,000 when no money's not there?
Well, we're recording the receivable because it is an obligation of the authority, and the commissioner's office does not have. The only way to remove this is if there was a legislative resolution that says we're giving this up. It would if that were to happen, there would be no impact on your bottom line undesignated because we have it fully reserved for $26 million. So the receivable would come off and that reserve would come off. Your total fund balance would diminish by 26, but the undesignated, which is the key number, would not change because it's already set aside for.
What's your recommendation with respect to that, or is that not your...
That's not, I mean, that's a policy decision that has to come from the county executive and the legislature to determine, what the future holds, regarding the water authority projects.
It just seems like we're counting money that we don't have.
Dan?
Yeah, when you had originally said that $27 million figure, I thought that you didn't attribute it to the water authority, but you attributed it to the water district? I know you were...
That was the water authority.
It was the water authority?
Yeah.
Okay. And then the other one was, you had talked about a certain amount of money that was returned in this year that you had reviewed back, and I think it was $23 million, and you said that if things were different, instead of having a $9 million surplus, that money wasn't anticipated, so we would have actually had something like an $11 million deficit. I want you to talk a little bit about that and explain where, the major monies came from and how's that even possible? How could this county have been put in a situation where if we didn't have a bunch of money that we didn't anticipate, we would have had an $11 million deficit?
Well, part of what happened was the additional federal money supplanted some state money that was promised to you. So the state, had promised money, and then they were having their problems. The federal stimulus money came in and said, "Oh, we'll use that to make everybody whole." That's a simplified version of what happened. And then what they did was they enhanced the FMAP money. They increased the percentage that you would normally get in FMAP money from, I think, 50% to 62,
Right.
62 and change. So that, while it sounds like an extra 12%, it's really a 20-some-odd% increase in that revenue source, and that generated money. You did factor that in, I believe, in the 2010 budget, so you won't see that kind of surplus in the 2010 budget that has been completed now. That was surplus for this year, and that's what helped generate this $9 million bottom line.
And when did the state pass a law banning municipalities from being able to set aside money for retirement benefits and things like that? You had said that it's not allowed in New York State, even if we wanted to do it, we couldn't do it.
Because there's no mechanism to fund it. They have to establish an irrevocable trust that once you put the money in, you can't take it out. It would be for that purpose to provide post-employment benefits. New York has not established. It has to be almost like the state retirement system.
But there's nothing to prevent us from creating a line in our designated fund balance for those purposes.
No, and that's what you did have. You had
Right.
$5 million
Okay.
for that purpose, yeah.
All right, thanks for that clarification.
Well,
Question? Mike? Harvey? Mike A? Okay.
I was looking, as I reviewed this before we started, I was on page 10, and I was looking at the business type of activities. And can you explain me the Valley View numbers here on page 10 in the middle column? Can you tell me what Valley View's operations are doing to this page? Can you explain that to me?
well, Valley View is most of this page, or most of that column. I can't explain Valley View. I'm not the auditor for Valley View, so we just take the numbers that are provided on that audited statement for Valley View and essentially get them into the county statement because it's required to be presented in the county statement. So these numbers that you see on page 10 essentially match the numbers that appear on page 28, with a few, unfortunately, with a few accounting changes that we have to make to it. But, essentially, the net assets, I'm trying to find, I'm on the, I'm sorry, 35, yeah. Service fund. In doing that statement that you saw on page 10, we have to bring the portion of those funds that relate to Valley View by themselves over to that column. So the net profit or loss of those internal service funds gets allocated between Valley View and then the rest of the county. And so that's why those numbers on that page differ slightly from the amounts on page 28. But there's a reconciliation, as you see on the bottom of 28. So when you see on page 10 that if you look on page 10, that third number up in the 2009 column, the negative $8,500,000, right. And if you go to page 28, you'll see the last number on 28 is the $8,500,000. Their actual operations showed a loss of $4.2 million. See that number right before it? But because of the adjustments of the portion of the internal service funds that we bring into Valley View was $4.2 million, that makes it 8.5. It's a very complicated conversion that has to get done.
I get
but that's what that basically is.
The year before, then the 2008 numbers were showing a profit there of $12 million.
Yeah, I believe that had to do with the. Think back to 2008, but I believe in 2008 we took a big chunk of what they call the IGT revenue, and they took a big chunk of that in 2000.
Until you got to the
intergovernmental transfer. In other words, for them to get, I believe the previous year was 16 million or so. I don't remember the exact number, but in order for the Valley View to get $16 million of revenue on their side, the county had to absorb $8 million in their Medicaid expenditure side. So you have to put up 8 for them to get 16. And this year, what was left of that IGT amounted, as you can see on page 28, to about $1.4 million. So that was about a $15 million swing from the previous year. So they had that revenue recognized last year, and now it dropped. And so that's why you see the big change in their bottom line.
And
it also shows the huge operating losses.
That's right. Let's just be clear. We're talking about the change in net assets here on